by the banks of the great gray, green, greasy Limpopo River, all bordered by fever trees, and the rock-colored python. He wrapped his tail around the rock, and he, through clenched teeth, pulled. And the little elephant pulled, and the rock-colored python pulled and pulled, and he said, "Young man." That's how the elephant got his trunk. And so he went back home, and he spanked all his uncles and aunts with his newly discovered trunk. That's Kipling.
And this is Bill Veeck. He's a legend in baseball. He's also a one-of-a-kind man. He's a dreamer who's not satisfied until his dreams come true in front of a full house. For 50 years, Bill has dreamed up thousands of different schemes, always aimed at delighting the paying customers. He put a midget, Eddie Goodell, up to bat. He put the players in shorts, installed a shower in the bleachers, landed Martians on the field, and built the world's first exploding scoreboard. But Bill has had his ups and downs operating ball clubs. In Cleveland, the world champion 1948 Indians set a league attendance record that still hasn't been broken. But he nearly went broke 5 years later with the St. Louis Browns. The 1959 White Sox won a pennant. But in the 1970s, it was a different ball game. Living out his fantasies in baseball reflects just one facet of Bill Veeck's spirit. He's written 3 books, hosted TV and radio shows for 40 years, and helped raise 9 children. Bill has bounced back from major surgery 33 times. He's a writer, a storyteller, a passionate gardener, a mobile maker, and wood craftsman. The longer he lives, the more he opens himself up to people. This program is about a complex man who never quits, a man who knows how to have a good time and provide it for others. Bill Veeck, a man for any season.
My daddy taught me a wonderful lesson. Very important lesson. When I was about 10, 11 years old, I guess. And he said, "Come in, I want to show you something." And there was all this money, more money than I'd ever seen at one time. And he said, "Look at that." And I said, "Yeah, it's a lot of money." And he said, "Well, what does that mean?" And I knew he had something in mind, and I tried desperately to think of what was the right answer, but couldn't, because I never wanted to disappoint him. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you." He said, "You can't tell who put that money in the box office, can you? You can't tell whose money that was." And he said, "That's important." He said, "That's something you want to remember. It all looks the same." And he taught me a lot of things. He was the nicest man I've ever met.
I've been in baseball all my life. I started hustling pop around the ballpark in Chicago when I was about 11 years old. And I worked on the ground crew and worked behind the concession stands, took tickets, sold tickets, finally maneuvered my way up the office where I didn't have to work so much. And finally a fellow by the name of Grimm and I, Charlie Grimm, who you possibly may remember as manager of the Cubs and currently managing Milwaukee, we got a few bucks together and we went up to Milwaukee and bought a ball club. We peddled enough ball players around to be able eventually to buy the Cleveland Indians. And bought those about 5 years ago, and we were pretty fortunate. We had a fellow by the name of Boudreaux who in 1948 won a world championship for us.
There's no one that is more knowledgeable in the game than Bill. And I think Bill introduced entertainment to baseball with his different ideas of putting on entertainment for the fans. He was actually in the fans' corner at all times.
He's the only owner I've ever run across who really thinks about the enjoyment of the fan. He always thinks in terms of what can he do to make the fan have more fun at the ballpark than they normally would have.
There's nothing to giving everyone in a ballpark an Eskimo pie. But to give one person 30,000 Eskimo pies, now that causes some interesting thought. What are they going to do with them? What happens when they start to melt? You know, How fast? Are they going to pass them around, or are they going to try and eat them themselves? You see, that's the thing that makes a promotion work. Incongruity.
Giving away Eskimo pies is just one of the promotions Bill came up with. He originated Bat Day, Jacket Day, Cap Day, Music Day, and many others. He was criticized by the other owners for some of his innovations, like putting names on uniforms, but they didn't hesitate to copy the ones that worked. Of course, a few schemes were one-time only, like Grandstand Manager's Day, when the decisions were made in the seats instead of the dugout. And many of the ideas started at Wrigley Field.
Oh, this is a wonderful ballpark. You know, it's really along with Fenway and Comiskey and Detroit, the last of the ballparks. And actually, I did some things right in this ballpark. I did some wrong, too.
In the 1930s, Bill worked for Philip Knight Wrigley and helped create beautiful Wrigley Field. He built the bleachers, designed the scoreboard, and planted the vines he now calls the world's best-known horticultural display.
What's behind your theory of showmanship in baseball?
Well, I happen to have a very ridiculous theory, according to many ball club operators, that it should be fun. You know, I don't think that baseball is such a grim, serious thing. Sure, I don't want to interfere with the game, but I do want everyone who comes out the ballpark to have fun. And look, let's face it, often the ball game is not the most exciting thing that ever's happened.
I have always operated on the theory that your fans, who are customers or patrons, but more nearly our friends, should be treated exactly the same way in a ballpark, as far as it's humanly possible, as if they were in your home. Because in reality, they are guests, with one exception. Really, maybe that you're the guest, and the ballpark belongs to them more accurately than it belongs to you. You're merely the custodian of their ballpark. So I've tried to operate it that way.
Conversation with Bill Veeck is a rare experience because you always go away from it with your head hurting. Because Bill is so stimulating. Every subject he talks about, he makes you think.
Today isn't so bad. It could be a lot worse, but tomorrow is going to be great. You know, and tomorrow never comes. Because, you see, by the time tomorrow comes, it's today. So it's the worst it could be is it's pretty good. And if it doesn't come, that would be terrible. In other words, I've had enough problems physically to recognize that it's just great to be around.
There are a lot of people I've met, particularly in the newspaper business, who have knowledge on all subjects, but it's very shallow. It's about half an inch thick. But Veeck knows everything about this subject, and the reason is because he reads so much and he can retain.
With a book, you can be anything you want. In television, you watch what someone predetermines you should watch, and you have maybe 3 or 4 choices. But you can be anything with a book. You can be in any part of the world. You can be with Marco Polo in China, and you can then the next day be in the South Sea Islands with Omo or Teepee and Herman Melville. Or you can be Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn on a raft. And no other way can you find that ability to be so many different people in so many different places.